Hi, everybody. Welcome to the January Community Webcast for Agile Central. My name is Caitlin Lamb. I work in product marketing for Agile Central. And here with me today, I have David Shuster. He is a senior customer portfolio representative on our customer success team. And today he's going to share with us a little bit about team-level reporting. And he's going to be sharing ways to measure teams and improve performance. I encourage all of you to ask questions using our Q&A tab to the right of the screen. We'll be saving Q&A until the very end, and also a replay of this webcast will be posted to the Agile Central community within the next few business days. So with that said, I will pass it on over to Dave.
Thanks, Caitlin. So welcome, everybody. Today, as mentioned, we'd like to talk a little bit about some team-level reporting and some information that you can get from Agile Central to help you improve your team's performances. So my name is Dave Shuster. As mentioned, I'm a customer success rep, and effectively my role is to help ensure that you as an existing customer and user of Agile Central are getting the value out of the investment that you've made in Agile Central. And I'd like to kind of let everyone know all current users of Agile Central have a customer success rep. So if you've got further questions or would like some assistance with either customization or working with the platform, please reach out to your customer success rep. If you don't know who that is, your account team should be able to help you identify and get you connected with that person. And if you don't know who your account team is, I would offer that, post a question here today and we'll make sure to get you connected with the right person. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. What I'd like to do is I'll be kind of switching back and forth between the presentation and the platform to show some examples of the reports that we're talking about versus just all slideware. Kind of give you an idea where you can find those reports, where they can be accessed, how you might interpret some of the information that you're seeing on those reports. And we'll first start off with the basically the Scrum type reports, and one of those being the sprint burndown. So what does this report show you? Well, essentially it's showing you the rate at which the stories are being completed by the team during the sprint. And where can you find this report? Well, let's pop over to the tool. This is one report that exists in multiple places, as many of the reports do. In this case, I've created a dashboard, so one way to get access to the report is to simply add it from the app catalog. And if you're not familiar with the app catalog, it's a listing of all of the out-of-the-box apps that are available for addition to dashboards within the platform. So iteration burndown is available there and has been added to this particular dashboard. Another place that it's available is on the iteration status page. Or if you expand the top graph banner, you'll see a burndown chart as well as a couple others that we'll look at later. So I can access it for the particular sprint that is shown in the iteration status page. And the last place that most of the reports are also going to be available for is on the Reports tab. And underneath there, you'll see a reports selection, and that's going to give you a listing of many of the things that we'll look at today, as well as several others that we're not going to be able to get through today. So one of those three places will be a place to go for your particular, burn down in this case. So keep in mind that the burn down is a point-in-time measurement, right? It's the amount of time, amount of work left at a particular point in time. And it's really helping you understand whether that team is going to be able to meet their commitments for the sprint. It's certainly going to be able to expose where teams have, overestimated and maybe overcommitted in their ability to deliver work for the iteration because they're not going to be able to finish it. So some of the things that you might want to look at in terms of helping understand whether the team is performing well or not is if teams are consistently finishing early, meaning they're completing their work before the end of the sprint, well, maybe they're not committing to enough, or maybe they have some estimation problems there. They're not, you know, very good yet at estimating the amount of work that's needed for those items. On the other side of the coin, you have teams that are consistently not finishing their work. So sprint to sprint, they're not completing the committed work and then having to push that work forward. So again, maybe there's an issue there with not estimating correctly, or, you know, needing to work on that, or just maybe a little overzealous and committing to too much work. Some other things that you can see or pick up from the Burndown, like we have here, we've got right out of the gate, we already have work that's accepted. Well, more than likely that was probably carried over from, you know, a previous sprint. So we'd like to understand, you know, why are we carrying that over, and hopefully this is, you know, more of an exception than the rule. Jumps in the hours, you know, mid-sprint. You know, seeing those increases, that's a good indication that, you know, some scope creep or some scope change is happening. We want to make sure we understand why. We'll see a little bit later how we can help even get a little bit more detail on that in terms of understanding that scope change. And we kind of, you know, we have this ideal line that we've got, and we'd certainly like to see that flow follow along as we, you know, use the hours and get acceptance. Another problem, it's not necessarily a team problem, is, you know, late acceptance or having that acceptance happen, you know, at the very end of the sprint. Certainly that could be, you know, a product owner is not getting onto that quick enough, or maybe the work isn't ready until the end of the sprint. But we'd like to see more of a consistent flow that follows kind of the ideal line that we've got on there. The other thing to remember is it's really important to make sure you're doing the updates to the work daily. As we're reporting, if you're not getting those in there, then we're going to see these erratic swings in completion and hours. So have your teams consistently update their information and make sure they're current with that. Okay. So the next report kind of ties into the Burndown, and that's, you know, the velocity. And, you know, what do I see on this report? Well, this is showing you what the team's average velocity for sprints are. And again, you're going to find this report in a number of places. It's under, as we saw, it's under the Reports tab to be run as a single instance, or can be added to a dashboard like we've done here from the app catalog. You know, additionally, this one is available in the time boxes page. So if I would happen to go to Plan, Time Boxes, and then select Iterations in the drop-down, you'll notice in the upper right corner I've got a little graph symbol, and that's going to give me the velocity chart for the particular project that I'm currently scoped to. So I can access it there through the reports or through the app catalog and add it to the dashboard as I've done here. So what do I see on this report? Well, a couple things that you know, will immediately stand out is we can see whether we're accepting work after the iteration or not accepting it at all. Of course, you know, both of those are conditions you want to try to avoid, and at least understand why that's happening. You know, it could be that, again, there was some scope added that kind of pushed the team beyond their commitment level, and they were unable to finish it. Maybe the acceptance really wasn't the team's fault. Again, could be the product owner not jumping on the work as soon as it's ready. The important thing is that we'd like to see some consistent performance over time. Now, of course, new teams may have sort of a ramp as they get organized and begin to form and storm and become more efficient. But at some point, you would expect to show a more consistent, a flat velocity over time. Now, there will be peaks and valleys, you know, certainly around holidays or when there's time off or people are missing. There's just going to be less delivered during that time. But in general, the trend should be fairly consistent. And the other thing to keep in mind, each team's velocity is unique, so it's not necessarily fair to compare one team to another. It may be a new team versus a very experienced and mature team, so their velocities are going to differ. The important part is, well, are they consistent? Are they delivering the same amount? Or as a new team, are they improving over time versus are they delivering at the same rate as this other team that we've got over here? Those outside forces, right, the scope changes that are being pushed in, those are going to affect this velocity, and we want to make sure that we address that. So I guess in general, thinking about these reports, each one in and of itself doesn't necessarily tell you the whole story. Looking at kind of accumulation of the information, drilling into it and understanding what might be going on there is more important than just taking a snapshot look at a bit of information and making decisions based on that. So trying to drive for consistent performance over time would be the goal with our velocity at the team level. So the next thing we'd like to talk about is scope change. And there is some change expected, certainly throughout a sprint. As you understand or look into a story, you may recognize there's a little bit more work there than you initially thought. And that kind of scope we expect. The kind that we're trying to avoid or prevent is that wholesale churn that occurs. And that can really throw teams off. So one thing that we've got is available to you is a scope change app. And what this is going to show you is the work items that were added or removed during a given sprint. And this is an out-of-the-box app that you can find in the app catalog, and it's going to help teams that, maybe as you saw on their velocity or their burn down, they weren't delivering, they didn't finish their commitments, they had big swings in the amount of work. Well, this can help identify where those swings came from. So you can see what the report is showing you is the different items that were added, and we can see there's a considerable amount of work added to this particular sprint, and that's certainly going to have an effect on the teams. So having new stories added, dropping stories, all these kind of changes are the kind of churn that we're trying to avoid. Using something like this to identify those changes kind of on a regular basis can help stop this from happening. I mean, ideally, once the team is committed to an amount of work for a sprint, they really shouldn't have, a huge turnover of work. They should be let alone to complete that commitment, and if there needs to be change, new priorities and such, then that should come in at the next sprint. It really shouldn't jump in the middle of the sprint. So other things that could potentially be causing that, there may be some poor definition of what's the priority work, and that's constantly changing. So having these changes exposed gives you the ability to have those conversations and discussions about what is the real need for this to happen, and having that thought put into it, then you can minimize the effect on the teams in terms of their scheduling and their workload as they try to struggle with dealing with that. All right. Another useful chart or graph is the cumulative flow diagram. And what this is going to show you is essentially it's going to show you the states that your work will have to pass through and the relative numbers of work items that are in those particular states. So as it shows, it's a graphical depiction of the work in progress. And it's really going to give you the ability to understand, where are bottlenecks and where are, potential problems in my process. Now, this is another one of those reports that is available on the iteration status page in that graph banner. So much like we saw the Burndown chart being available there, you can access it at the iteration status page, or it can be added as an app from the app catalog or accessed on the report page as well. So the idea is that what we would like to see is kind of a smooth flow of work, from left to right. When we see large bulges of data for periods of time, we see that that's caused by some sort of a backup in the process. Maybe we've got blockers that are causing that work to stall and not be able to progress. We can also see where we have additional work being added as we see these increases in the amount of work over the course of the sprint. So again, we've got some scope creep or scope change happening that we'd like to address and try to keep under control. We can see, again, we've got work that was completed out of the box on day one, probably carried over from the previous sprint. So want to understand why that's happening and make sure that it's not the norm or the exception. And we're not completing or accepting all of the work by the end of the sprint. So could be because we've added this additional scope that the team just was not able to get through. But by seeing it, we can see these large blocks, and then we've got again some very thin areas where things are not flowing equally through the process. We've got some turmoil there. When again, starting to accept fairly late in the sprint as well. So that's going to create a backlog of acceptance and maybe not allow all of those to get accepted by the end of the sprint. So overall, what you're going to get from the CFD is a real good visual identification of where you've got either bottlenecks or process issues that you might want to address with the teams or others that are involved with the teams. All right. So next we kind of like to switch over a little bit and talk about some of the things that might be applicable to Kanban teams. And the first one of those is the lead time. So we'll switch over. And again, these reports are available under the Reports tab or as apps within the app catalog to add to a dashboard. So you may want to create, for your Kanban teams, you may want to create a dashboard that has these few reports and you can go to quickly and understand how the teams are performing. So the lead time report shows us essentially, what is the time it takes for a work item to pass through my entire process. And that's from start to finish. So it includes kind of the wait state, while it's sitting idle, waiting for something to happen. And the idea is that we want to use these, these lead times to help improve the process. So if we see, we're sitting in a particular state or taking too long to get through, and we may want to make some adjustments to the flow in order to have that be a little more efficient and, get items through the process a little quicker. You like to be predictable, right? Because without knowing or understanding how long it takes to get through the process, then you really don't have a way to estimate how much work you can get done. You're pretty much just guessing at that time to know, what your capability is. The kind of things that you want to look out for, where you have lines kind of that are maybe trending up. So it's an indication that it's taking longer for items to flow through your process. And again, looking at a single chart at a single point in time is not the only way to understand what's going on. Taking things together in context of other events is important, right? We may be at the end of the year, holiday time, so we don't have as many folks, so sure, work takes a little longer to get through the process. Overall, we'd like and hope to see pretty much of a flat and a consistent delivery time, through the process. Certainly, we don't want to see things that take longer than, abnormal amount of time to get through. All right, and the next Kanban-related report is cycle time. And, you know, what do I get with the cycle time? Well, the cycle time is going to show you the time it takes to move from a particular state to another particular state, whereas the lead time was showing us from end to end. The cycle time is a little more specific in showing us per particular state. So as I'm going through the process, I can see how long I'm spending in each of the steps in the process. Now, this is an out-of-the-box report that you would add from the app catalog to, to a dashboard, and it has configuration set up so I can, certainly focus on my particular, Kanban states that I've got defined. I can determine what are the states, the start and stop that I'm concerned with, and maybe also the time period that I'm looking at to understand how my cycle time was reporting. The purpose of this would be to understand, where you could potentially improve parts of the flow. If you have areas that are, items are sitting for a long time, maybe there's a WIP limit problem there, so you may need to adjust the flow to smooth that out, have things go through the system a little quicker. Generally, the lead time, cycle time are going to kind of work together to understand, what is the overall time that we're spending and where can we make some improvements to help this process go through, items go through the process a little bit better. You may see like 0 time periods. There's an indication that things are just jumping through the process quickly. They're not actually spending any time in that particular state. It may have jumped from the initial state to somewhere in the middle. So I want to understand why that's happening, and is something going on with that particular process? Is it maybe something you don't need, an additional state that doesn't provide any value? And the last Kanban report that we'll take a look at is the throughput. And this is really a fairly simple, report in terms of what it's showing you. It's basically the number of the work items that you've accepted over, some period of time. Again, this report is available through, the Reports tab or from the app catalog. And it's going to show you over, the time periods that you've specified how many items have gotten through your process. And again, in conjunction with the other reports, Kanban type reports that we looked at, the cycle time and lead time, you can get an understanding of, is your flow efficient and effective? So again, not a particular measure, here, in December we see a bit of a drop. Of course, we might expect that due to, time off and holidays and such. The average or the trend is kind of where we'd like to, focus on. Is it continuing on a flat or maybe even trending upward, or, is it trending downward? So looking at it from a kind of a step back is a better view than an individual point in time, 1 month or 1 week measure. So combining this with the other measures kind of gives you that more complete picture of how your workflow is working, how items are flowing through that workflow, and is it an efficient flow. The things, obviously, things to look out for would be huge swings in the measurements, giant peak, and then the following month, very flat. At least something to investigate if you see that, right? You want to understand why you had, so many items 1 month and so few the next. Could be they were different sized items. The number doesn't necessarily account for the size or complexity of that item. So it may be that there were just fewer items completed and that was because each item involved more work or had more to it than in previous months. The idea is using these measures gives you the ability to be able to predict better what you're going to be able to deliver in the future, and give you those measurements to help know what your capabilities are as you move forward. So now we'll take a look at some other maybe additional reports that you can use to help understand how teams are performing or where you might be able to see some improvement. And one of those is kind of around defects and defect management in general. So, defect trends is one, and this is kind of going to show you more of a trending of how many defects are being opened versus how many are being closed to give you an idea of how you're doing with defects. There are some additional defect-related reports that give you, just raw numbers of how many high-priority ones and those kinds of things that probably you would use in conjunction with this to get a better overall, defect management process. Now, where do you find this report? Again, this is another under the Reports tab, or can be added from the app catalog. But the kind of information that you're going to see on here is a couple trending lines of showing, how many defects are being opened versus, how many are being closed. And the idea, in terms of helping, the teams get better is we now can understand, as we're kind of converging those, we certainly like to make sure that we're closing off the defects at least at the same rate that we're opening them, hopefully quicker, so that we don't diverge those lines. So having those kind of going apart would be a bad indication. Maybe there's some room for some improvement in the code quality, but having the visual cue here, gives you some responsibility onto the team to make sure they're doing the right thing, they're getting the work done correctly, they're still that quality into the product. Make sure that you're helping get that quality as you're working. So by minimizing the number of new defects that are being open and making sure that you're able to close the ones that are open. Now, the thing about defects is, not all of them are potentially going to get resolved in this sprint, right? Depending on the situation. If it's a non-blocker, then you may defer that until later. So, again, that's why a single chart or a single measure is not the best way to understand what's going on. In conjunction with other things, knowing, we have these defects, they're too big, there's too much work, we can't fit it into this sprint, so it's going to get carried over. Those kinds of things are important to understand as well with the just trending information. So you've got that overall view that we're going to deal with these. We know that it exists. It's just not work that we can accept or take on during this sprint, and we'll defer it to a later sprint. But it does give you the view that, we are addressing them, we understand they exist, and we're going to take care of them as time warrants. Another area that you can take a look at is, just understanding your team's capacity. So the capacity report is going to show you, how much members of a team have capacity-wise, and also how much have they committed to, or how much has that been allocated to them. And the importance there is that what we want to make sure is we're not overloading, or our team members are not over-committing to work, and thereby introducing a risk into the product, the project. What the report shows you, and this is a standard report, it is available under the Track Team Status option. And what it shows you is for any given team member, they can identify, what their capacity is for the sprint. If they happen to work on multiple teams, and they would allocate their time, across those multiple teams. And then as work is taken on by that particular user, we can see how does that measure up with what their capacity is. So when you see red, obviously that's an issue. So team members that have, less capacity than the amount of work are at risk of not being able to complete that work. Not having a capacity set doesn't help as well. That way you don't know, what can this user or what can this team member take on for this particular sprint. So being able to know, what the user has committed to, and then the amount of work that is currently available to them, you can do the load balancing. So if you're over capacity, you can start looking at, well, is there another member of the team? Maybe Dudley is a testing resource, and he's shared across multiple teams, has a lot of testing work to do. Well, this is a good time to get that kind of cross-functional team working. Someone else on the team, could they possibly take on some of that testing work? Using the capacity report will help you understand where the team members are in terms of what capacity they have, how much work they have committed to or have available, and help you load balance and get things more evenly distributed across the teams and avoid the risk of having too much work and not getting the commitment completed for the sprint. And then the last few things that I kind of like to talk about are not necessarily team-specific, but other reporting options. We get, on the CSM team, we get a lot of questions about reporting in general, and there are a few things out there that maybe some folks are not aware of or haven't had a chance to see, and so I wanted to kind of add those into the list here for you to give you an idea of where to look for some other reporting options. So one of the most common ones that we recommend or propose for folks to use is the custom list, the custom list app. So the custom list is an out-of-the-box app, so you would add this to a page or a dashboard and from the app catalog. Now, the limit is that the custom list is only available for a single work item at a type. So I can look at user stories, or I can look at defects, or I can look at features, test cases, whatever. That's the downside to it, but it does give you all of the filtering and capabilities that you have on many of the other screens within the platform. You've got the ability to add query syntax, query support, so that can have some additional filtering. You've also got the standard filtering as well as advanced, so you can get those combination filters. And it also supports exporting and importing of items to the page. So when you're looking for kind of like an ad hoc report of a particular work item type, the custom list is a very good option to use for that particular solution. You can certainly have multiple lists with different items and different conditions to kind of slice and dice your data in a number of different ways that you might want to see. Now, the next item kind of for ad hoc reporting is a relatively new solution that was brought out probably in the last couple quarters, referred to as work views. And I like to think of this really as kind of a superset of a custom list. So under Plan, Work Views is where you would find it. And the difference between the custom list and the work views is that the work views does not have the limits that the custom list has. It allows you to include multiple work item types. So in this case, I'm looking at user stories and defects. And it also allows me to cross over multiple projects. So for whatever reason, I may have an interest in a particular set of data, maybe across multiple teams that I'd like to report on or see. The work views is going to give me that option. So I'll be able to define the teams that I'm interested in and the work items that I'm interested in. I've got the filtering capability, so I can reduce that down to the set that makes sense to me, as well as customizing the columns and what I see on the list. And then ultimately, if I need to, I can go ahead and export that to a CSV file for outside processing if necessary. Once I've got this all set up, then I can save this off to a view and come back to it later to analyze it more as I need to. And I'll still have all of the settings retained and the information there. And the last thing that I'll point out is kind of really another ad hoc reporting capability that exists in the tool, and that's the report builder. And this you're going to find under the Reports tab. In addition to all of the kind of out-of-the-box ones that we've talked about or mentioned, there's also the ability to create kind of a custom report, if you will. And to do that, you click on the button, and depending on if you're using Time Tracker or not, you would see a timesheet option in here. If you're not, then you would be specific to work items. But from here, then you can start to kind of build up a report. So if I would like to build a report based on the sum of the plan estimate, and I want it broken down by project, and then by work item owner, and I could create several different divisions. I could add some filtering in here to identify certain conditions that I want to have, and then I can go ahead and run that. And what I'll get is a kind of a very simple list of that information summarized and broken down by the various categories, subdivisions that I chose as I built this report up. I can go ahead and export it off, or save this information off if I wanted to, and I could save this obviously as a a custom report and come back to it later. So you've got a number of different options to summarize the information by, and then a number of different ways to organize and subdivide and summarize that work on within the report builder. So that was kind of the material that I wanted to cover, and so now we can kind of open it up for questions.
Yep, that's great. So Dave, if you want to stop sharing your screen for a moment and take a look at some of the questions that came in through the Q&A. We'll also take a moment for anyone to ask any questions that they have at this time. But I also wanted to take a moment to talk about the great offerings that we have for CA Agile Academy. We offer a number of courses and certification classes that will really help you and your organization to really get the most out of your Agile transformation. We have a great Agile Central end-to-end class. It used to be called our Power User class, but it's for anybody who's maybe new to using Agile Central or if they need help getting more comfortable in the platform. We have an upcoming class in Boulder, Colorado from March 6th through 7th. And we also offer a number of Agile certification classes if you want to learn more about Agile frameworks or different roles. I took the Certified Scrum Master course over the summer, and I thought that it was an excellent and interactive experience, so I highly recommend that course for everybody. And if you want more information about these courses, I suggest that you go to agileacademy.ca.com for more details and information for registration. So with that said, I will pass it over to Dave to answer some of the Q&A that are coming in right now.
Yeah, so the first one that I see is how do I navigate to the scope change app? And I'll kind of show you how to do that. So the scope change is an out-of-the-box app that is part of the app catalog. So what I've got here is I've got a dashboard that I've created. Now you could create your own or add it to an existing one. But let's go to the Add App, or if you're initially creating the page, you'll be prompted to add apps as you're doing that. And then you can search. The new app catalog is very nice in terms of allowing you to search by words or organized by different kinds of categories. So in this case, I searched for the scope change, and I've got the iteration scope change, and then I would just simply add that, to the page, and then it will add that app to your existing dashboard. Next one is they're requesting the customer success rep for there, and we'll take that and get that to you for sure after the call is over. Also have another question on the cycle time data app, and it is the same thing that we just went through. It is an app catalog app, so you would go to the an existing page or create a new page, go to the app catalog, search for cycle time, and it'll be one of the options in there to go ahead and add to your existing page or your new page that you just created. So it's an out-of-the-box app catalog app is the short answer to that.
And I believe that's all the questions that we have at the moment. And for any that we didn't get to live on the call, we'll certainly follow up finding out information for the customer success rep for the person who asked that question. So thank you, Dave, and thank you to everybody on the call for taking time out of your morning and afternoon to learn about team-level reporting with us. If you have any questions after this webcast, like Dave said, please connect with your customer success rep, or feel free to post a question on the Agile Central community. We're definitely here to help. Stay tuned for updates on our February webcast that we'll be posting shortly. We hope that you'll join us again next month, and please invite your colleagues to join as well. Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.